Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the UnLearnT podcast. I am your host, Ruth Abigail, aka RA,
What's up? What's up? It's your girl Chiquita.
and this is the podcast that is helping you gain the courage to change your mind so that you can experience more freedom. We're very excited to be with y'all week after week. We drop on Tuesdays. Be sure to like, share, subscribe.
Get
And
in
this
there.
is something that you find helpful to yourself or somebody else that you might know.
Listen. You got a friend. You got a friend you know need this. All right. Don't hold it to yourself. Be a good friend and share. All right. That's what friends do. They
Ah,
give unto each other. Amen.
they
I've
do.
been giving to Ruth for a long time. That's why she is the person she is today, because I decided to share my thoughts and opinions with her to make her a better person. And if you like the leader you know her to be, thank a friend. You need to
Wow.
share a friend. If you see a friend struggling, you too can help their lives. Amen, somebody?
Wow.
Amen.
That was a lot. That was a lot. That was a
Hey,
lot. High degrees
yeah,
of confidence we have here.
it's all about trying to help people
Is
to,
it? Is it?
to understand the necessity of
Mm,
helping their friends. And I felt like I could be of help there.
wow.
All seriousness, no, me and Ruth, we share with each other. We
We
share.
do.
I think a part of like the idea for this podcast came when me and Ruth got like the leadership roles that we have now. We started like having like meetings. Like, hey,
We
let's
did. We
have
did. Yeah, we did.
let's have some talks about what you're learning in leadership
Mm,
and how we can help each other. We were like reading books, like, hey, I read this
facts.
book
That's
and
actually
it
very
taught
true.
me this. Like,
That's
what
actually
you
very
learned,
true.
what you reading. I need some help.
That
So
is
like
true.
literally like I think a lot of like what we know about leadership, we kind of learn together. And I think that's what good friendship is. It's
Yeah.
really having each other's backs through all seasons of life. And
Yeah.
leadership is just one of those things. We were like, hey, you a leader? I'm a leader too. You got some tips?
No, that's a good
So
point. No, that's
yeah.
true. I forgot we used to have our what we call them directors meetings.
Our
I
directors
yeah.
meetings.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. We did used to do that, and now these are our directors meetings. Now we're doing them publicly. You know what I mean? Because
Listen.
our
We letting y'all in, okay?
yeah,
Giving you
because we
the
be talking about this
inside
stuff.
scoop.
We be talking about this stuff. This is important, and leadership is actually a very uh, we've been talking about different things, relationships, finances, mentorship. We've been talking about different things. I think this topic is something that is really pretty near and dear to our hearts,
Absolutely.
because it's leadership's not about a position. It's about influence. It's about who you are as a person. And even though
Mhm.
we haven't always been in leadership positions, we have always found ourselves as leaders on our journeys. And so I think that we've been dealing with this topic for a long time. And so
Absolutely.
because of that, we're actually going to break this thing up. So you're going to get two. How many, Quita?
2.
Two.
We got a 2 for 1
Two.
special coming
Two
at
for
you.
one. Two for one.
Okay? Buy one get one free.
There you go. Buy one, get one
BOGO.
free. BOGO.
BOGO.
We're gonna break this up because we looked at our notes and we're like, oh shoot, this is gonna be a 4 hour conversation. So let's not do that to the people. We're not Joe Rogan in here. We're gonna split this thing in half
We're going to
and
split her up.
and talk a little bit about leadership over the course of a couple weeks. So we really would love for y'all to engage with this. We have, I think we've said this in previous episodes, like young leaders are extremely needed today. Like we need to
Mhm.
get to a point where we are prepared to take the mantle of leadership.
For sure.
And it is a there's a lot to learn. We're leading in a very different culture. And so we wanted to just talk through a few ideas. We'll do a few today and a few next week. We want to talk through a few ideas that we have unlearned about leadership.
My
Um
lord.
and we're gonna just share. Is that all right with you, Quita? We gonna do that? That's what we gonna do?
Listen, sharing is caring, okay? And we care about y'all.
We do.
And I think one of the things that Ruth Abigail just said, like the our future organizations are going to be shaped by how our young leaders learn to lead. And if we don't pass down the information that we learned, then we're not setting ourselves up to have better futures. Like when we are at the next level of our leadership, I am preparing the people who are under me right now. I'm preparing every single one of them to be able to take my job if they want it. Like, and you have to pass down information like that so that this thing can continue. We don't want no laps.
We don't want no lapse, and that the key is if they want it, because there's a lot of reasons you might not. And I think that's a reality of leadership.
Hmm.
So we'll just dive in.
Hop
I
on
think
in there.
we're gonna dive in. So um the first thing, so like I'm a co-founder of an organization. I've led in many different positions. This is the first one I've led from the top, like the top of the org chart, if you will. uh, but in other positions as well. And in those, I've made a lot of mistakes, as most leaders have. I don't dare say all people in leadership positions have made mistakes. And
Child.
so I obviously, we have a podcast, so we like to talk. Words are something that, I think both me and Quita are pretty good with. But here's the thing, and this is kind of the first thing, something I've had to unlearn as a leader, that you don't, when you make a mistake and when you have to shift something in your leadership, you have to fight the perception of what, based on what you've done, right?
Hmm.
There is a perception of you as a leader. You
Yeah,
got to fight that perception with actions, not words,
for
because
sure.
the perception was based in an action. So you can't
Hmm.
fix the perception by saying what you're going to do or saying how you're going to change or making it real eloquent and explaining it and all this stuff and creating a nice little podcast about it. You have to do it. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? You got
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do
yeah.
it. And so a lot of times explanation is not what people need. They need action. And
Yeah.
that's one
Oh,
of the
that's
things that I've
good.
had to unlearn, as a leader, that, and not just any action but immediate action. And I have learned that the hard way. Like those battles have been fought, hard fought and won in my leadership journey, is immediate action. What do you think?
No, okay, so I don't know why. I don't know why, but this random like quote from a movie just came to my mind. Love and basketball. Yes, I know it's problematic, but here the point, right? But where Monica just joined the team and like she was struggling cuz she was like a rookie, like it was her freshman year and the coach was like riding her. And I remember there was one point where they were running on the track and Monica was struggling
Mm,
and she was kind of in the back. And the coach yelled out at her and said, Monica, point guards lead from the front. Right. Like, and it's not just about like, are you able to finish the lap? Yes. But the perception is that if you're going to be a person that leads this team, that has any role on this team, you have to be in the front of it. And so I think that as leaders, our actions have to stay at the forefront of our perception. Like, we have
mm,
to continue to like, put ourselves out there and make ourselves uncomfortable. And I think that that starts by realizing that everybody on your team is going to need something different and their perception of you is important. Like, you don't get to just say, this is who I am as a leader.
right, right,
No,
right.
no, like and I think if you start with a servant slash service mindset towards your leadership, that makes it easier to serve through actions because service is always actions. We can
Yeah,
always say, oh man, the poor just need money. They need resources. They need things, and we can talk about it all day, but only actually providing those resources is going to answer their immediate problems.
that's
And I
right.
think that we need to see our leadership like that too. Like, when you've made a mistake, or and sometimes it's not even about making mistakes. Sometimes there's just something that needs to be resolved that
Yes,
only you can do.
that's
And
right.
so you have to be the one, and you have to be the one to start the action at the
Yeah.
very least, and make sure that you are modeling for your team what you want them to follow in.
Yeah. Recently, I addressed a couple of just frustrations that teams have, and with a few of my team members, and I realized that we had a good conversation. So out of that, the first thing, I think one of the most important things is to uh, ask what needs to be done, right?
Mhm.
So I think a part of, if you're going to use your words, use them for a question and ask your team,
Mm.
what is it that I need? What is it that you would need from me in order to resolve this? And
Mhm.
then go do it. Go do it, right? I recently had a conversation with some of my team members, general team stuff. I mean, look, if you lead people, you're going to have issues. Like, it is what it is. That's no
Mhm.
surprise to anybody. You're always just going to have like just stuff, right? Different personalities, different expectations, different understandings, miscommunication, all of it. And as a leader, if you are leading people, whether it's one person or 100 people, you've got to find ways to manage that.
Mhm.
So one of the things I was actually thinking about recently was like, how am I going to answer this or kind of respond to to one of these frustrations? And it can be as simple as reintroducing a tool of just a tool for people to use. So it don't always have to
Mhm.
be something like unique or specific, or like, you don't always have to it sometimes it's just a matter of like, hey, we just need a way to work better. So
Yeah.
I spent some time really kind of revising a tool that we had used in the past. I was like, oh shoot, we stopped using this, and this is where some of this stuff can kind of go out of whack. It's like, hey, we haven't used
Mhm.
this in a couple of years. Let's bring it back. It actually worked. Now there's some responsibility on both ends to some accountability, but the tool helps to hold the accountability, which
Yeah.
ultimately will help with some of when you have tools of accountability, a lot of times it helps with some of those misunderstandings. And so I think that is just a real practical way. It's like, find a tool. The tool should not always be you. If it's you, you're going to burn out. You're going to be way too exhausted, always
That's
dealing with
good.
stuff all
Yeah.
the time uh for each thing. And you're also not going to do it effectively because you as a human have emotions attached to you.
For
Tools don't
sure.
have emotions. Use the tool, right?
Yeah,
And
and I think that like as a leader, you have to be diligent about like keeping yourself informed. Leadership, you know how people say, like are you a natural leader? Like, like you might have
yeah,
a natural leadership capacity, but any talent or any gift that you have, if you are not building upon that, if you are not pouring into yourself and finding resources, whether that's going to conferences, whether that's reading books about leadership, like you
yeah,
need tools at your disposal. But
hmm,
if you're not going out looking for that and you're always trying to shoot from the hip
yeah,
every time you find yourself in a new situation,
yeah,
you're not gonna know how to react or how to be proactive in order to set the attitude for your team. And a lot of times we come in with our own presuppositions about how people should feel about things or how people should react. One thing that I try to be really intentional with my team is that we are intentional on every meeting. We start with kudos and affirmations, right? Like like start by telling each other like what are the good things that we've seen about each other, what are the things that we've seen each other accomplish this year that we're like, man, you really pushed through, and want to let you know that I saw that, right? But even in that, like I still hear not just my team members but other partners, community partners say, man, we don't get recognized enough for our work. Well, how many times am I going to hear that before I do something about it?
yeah,
Right? How many times am I and I think that the worst thing for somebody who is a team member to feel is unheard.
yeah,
I have, because even speaking a concern is uncomfortable, right? Like if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I have a concern about the way something is happening on the team. I have a concern about about the way something is happening in the organization. And I have braved through whatever I had to brave through to express my concern to you.
yeah,
And if you don't act on their concern, they will feel unheard. And that stuff, if they stop talking to you, is going to get bottled up. And now you have created more issues on your team. So the best thing you can do is that when you are presented with the issues and with the situations, that your team is still feels vulnerable and comfortable enough to
yeah,
share, you
yep,
need to move on it because
yep,
you don't want
yep,
them to feel like you are a person who is dismissing what they're bringing to your attention. And moving on it does not mean just commiserating with them. It doesn't mean like, man, girl, you feel that? Me too. Really does suck, doesn't it? Man, these people crazy, ain't it? Yeah, girl, but we gonna keep on pushing through. Just push on through
mm,
and it's gonna be all right. No, I had one situation. be careful how I say this, but I had one situation where a team member just expressed concern with how another leader was kind of like approaching them about a situation. And so I said, you know what? Put me on the meeting, because they were having side meetings with this person. I said, don't even worry about it. Add me to the meeting, because I'm not going to let you face that alone. Right.
Mhm.
I had to come up with a solution, like, so that one, my team member didn't feel unheard and that she didn't feel like she had backing, and also inserting myself into the situation to say, hey, I don't yet know what the solution is, but I know it's not going to be on her alone to carry this weight. If she brings a weight to me that says, hey, I'm really struggling with this, then okay, add me to the mix. Let's roll. Let's go. We roll together.
Yeah.
What's up? What you need to say? What's
Yeah.
going on? What needs to happen? Okay. And it's not even a confrontational thing. It's just you need to, like, needs to be known, like, I got her back. And that's what people need to feel,
Yeah.
right? Is that my leader, the person that I put my trust in, has my back. But if you don't move, and you just all talk and no show, people not going to respect that, and then they're going to start finding solutions outside of you. And as a leader, I'm saying, it's one thing that can be done. As a leader, nothing feels worse than to see your team members go to other people to get what they need.
Mm.
Nothing feels worse when they brought something to you and you didn't resolve it, so then they took it past you. Like, as a leader, that's not a good feeling. But if you
Yeah.
don't, and sometimes it's not about making the right move, it's just about moving.
Doing something.
Keep
Right.
moving until it's resolved.
Yep.
Okay, that didn't work, we're gonna try something else. Okay, that
Yep.
didn't work, we're gonna
Yep.
try something else. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I think you said something really good. Being heard is not just a matter of literally listening; it's a matter of taking action. The
Mm,
feeling of being unheard, like sometimes, like I appreciate you listening, and they do, but that
mm-hmm.
they're not coming to you for you to just listen most of the
Yeah.
time. They're coming to you because they want you to do something. So
Mm-hmm.
for a person to not feel unheard, it's going to take more than listening. It's going to take some version of action. And I like it can be tough. It can be tough. I know one of the challenges I face with it is uh, honestly prioritizing it, because you have all
Mm-hmm.
these other I have all these other things that I'm doing, right? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you got to prioritize those moments. It's not something you get to push to the next meeting or next staff meeting. Work,
Mm-hmm.
do it today. It is not
Yeah.
something that you get to push to the next one-on-one. Sometimes it needs to be handled today, right?
Yeah.
And so I have learned that it's not something you need to schedule another meeting for. I've done all
Mm-hmm.
those things, right? Pushed it to a staff meeting, said I'll talk about it in the one-on-one. We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
create a different meeting to handle this. I've done all those. None of them worked. None of them worked. All of them were about me being more comfortable with confronting it. And
Mm-hmm.
so I chose living in my own comfort zone as opposed to taking the right action when it comes
Yeah.
to that. And so it gave a perception for my team at the time of I don't believe anything's going to change. And
Yeah.
so, when you hear that from your team, like you need to take that into consideration. And I think a lot of leaders, whether their team is, uh, you know, saying it to them directly, which to your what you said earlier, like that is really difficult. It's a difficult thing to come to, like to gather
Mm-hmm.
up the courage to say, I don't like something or something isn't working for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if they're not telling you, they're probably telling somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And this and I've seen it. This generation, there are a lot of different ways to make money, and they have found them. So they are
They're not
not
playing with
tied.
us.
I'm telling
They're
you,
not
they're
playing with
not
us.
tied. They're not tied to your job.
Mm-mm.
And so if it's the emotional and empathetic um uh kind of muscle is not worked on in the
Yeah.
organization and the company, they gonna
On to the
leave.
next.
And I don't blame them. I understand that, right? I get that. And so it's really up to us to work that organizational muscle, which is a
Mm-hmm.
very different way of approaching, I think, leadership in our generation. That hasn't been the story. And so, like, action, action, action. Listen to people and take the action.
Yeah.
And I think that's been something that I've had to unlearn. Um,
Yeah, I think
you got something else?
workplace culture has become like such a like huge thing. Like,
Oh God.
like if they don't feel like, how like it used to be like they had those memes where it was like if you're on a job interview and they say we're like a family,
Oh God.
like it was like run,
Yeah.
like nah,
Yeah.
like number one, like you have to, with this generation, you have to be able to create a culture that establishes a high level of familiarity but also has a lot of boundaries.
Absolutely.
Like they want their privacy, they want their time. Don't you don't need to know all my business, but make me feel comfortable while I'm here. Make me feel good while I'm here. And maybe I'll have a one-on-one something with you, but I don't need it with everybody. And so like you have to be able to establish that culture.
Yeah. No, that's good. I heard it say don't describe your organization as a family. You're a team, not a family. It's two very different things. And
Listen.
so you're not a family because you're just not. Anyway, we can talk about that another time. All right. So all right. What's the next thing, Quita?
All right, so I'm really excited to talk about this one, managers versus leaders, right? And I think that a lot of times when we think about our leadership style and the way that we approach even just being a leader, like you have to recognize that when you are leading, especially when you are leading a group of people, you have to differentiate between, am I moving along a process or am I moving along people,
Right.
right? So managers move processes,
That's
they
right.
move systems, they move, purpose and the way things are operating, right? Leaders move people, right? And you have to be able, in most cases, you have to be able to kind of vacillate between that, right? Like, am I in management mode where there's a process, there's a strategic
Mm,
move that we're trying to facilitate, and so I'm managing that process, right? But it is my job when I'm in front of a team to be able to lead a team. And when we talk about the word people, there is no one characteristic that fits people, right? I have a team of it's a total of 5 of us, right? I have to be able to cater to each person on the team, including myself. Right? I have to know, as a leader, I have to know how to lead myself in order to be able to lead my team. Right. And so there are just so many scenarios. I got a couple in mind, but Ruth Abigail, I'm gonna let you pop us off. Like, what are some examples of times where you had to work as a manager and or work as a leader?
I'll say right off top, I hate managing. I don't like
Same.
it. I hate it. Like
Same.
and so to be quite frank, I don't do it well. I absolutely do not do it well. That has been, I think, one of my one of my downfalls, and one of the things I have definitely had to unlearn is like, as a leader, you can't opt out of managing. What has helped me though is what you said, is understanding that you have to manage systems and processes. I think the thing that bothered me about
Mm-hmm.
managing is I never wanted anyone to feel like they were being controlled, and I don't want to feel like I'm being controlled. I want to be trusted. So so I always wanted and I still do. I want to have that culture of trust within our team. However, that doesn't come without trust. Does not come without accountability, and systems help you keep things accountable, not just
For
people,
sure.
but goals and all those things. Like you gotta you're going somewhere, and so we have to use these systems and processes and manage those in order to in order for people to feel successful. And then the leading people, I think, is how am I responding to how people are using those systems and processes and what it's
Mm-hmm.
doing to them. That I lean much more into. I'm gonna lean more into the people part than the process part. I'm
Yeah.
learning that the process part is essential for the people part, because it helps
Yeah.
them to see how they're moving better than I can say, "Oh, you're doing a good job." And I think I've had to unlearn that, and I'm continuing to unlearn it. Um, I I am I think, shoot, I'm there have been there I mean, we're a startup organization, so processes, and I think we talked about this on another episode, Quita. We are very, very different stages. We work in
Mm-hmm.
very different stages of organizations. And
Yeah.
I've always worked in startup kind of I've spent 15 years being a part of founding teams of something.
Lord, that's a middle adult. I've been in this work for 15 years.
And
All right.
I have to say it like that because oftentimes I forget that, and I forget how much that experience has ingrained my expectation of workplace. I don't
Yeah.
come into a workplace expecting to have all this structure. I'm expecting
Yeah.
to build it or to work
Yeah.
without it. Like
Yeah.
that's how I've been formed. So I have to quickly unlearn that most people that you're going to hire at another stage, at like your second stage of growth in an organization, are going to be people who have experienced different work environments. They're not going to be the people that founded it with you. It's going to be people coming from places that they have more structure. So for us, creating those processes has been a creation. It hasn't been a following.
Mm.
It's been we have to build them.
Yeah.
And it's been a struggle to figure out what you need when you need it. You also often you learn by some crisis happening, and you have to figure it out. And from that crisis comes a process that's built so we can handle the crisis, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Or issue. Everything's on a crisis, but or just confusion, right? There's all these moments require you to put something in place. And so I remember we were trying to figure out, we would get all these requests from for performances, right? And we've been doing it for years. And so for a lot of years, we when I say we, myself, and then the other two the founding team would just make decisions based on what we understood to be the need, or who we knew, or whatever. We would kind of make decisions. Well, when we start to bring other people into that mix, and we had to start to focus in on other areas of the organization, and had to then give them some
Leverage.
authority or some
Mhm.
autonomy over choosing. And we had to quickly we realized, because there were moments where it's like they would maybe turn down something, and we were like, wait, hold on, but we know them, like we can't turn it down, like we got to do this. And they'd be like, well, you told us that we had the option to do it, right? And we're like, yeah, 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 but not this one. And that can't happen over and over. You can't be coming in vetoing folk that you give authority to, right?
Yeah.
That don't work. So we said, okay, we need to create a process by how we take performances. What are the most important things that need to happen? So we sat down as a team and created a list and say, if it checks 3 out of 5 of these boxes, or whatever it is, 4 out of 5 of these boxes, then we can say yes. And if it's less than that, then we can't do it. And as founders, we had to be okay with that. We had to be okay with not having the final say in that, and giving somebody else the authority. And also, the team had to be okay with the idea of like going through this process. And
Mm.
so there is that helped. It helped. It wasn't perfect because, again, when you're used to doing things and moving quickly like that, process to slow you down. Can feel like they slow you down, which I hate.
Mhm.
But you got to get used to it. So yeah, I think that's a like for us, that's just one example of how we've had to shift that culture. and
Mhm.
and so that's what we did, and it's worked. I mean, it's worked. It's much better than it was before.
No, I think that that's really, really key, because the example that I was thinking of when I think about managers versus leaders is there is nothing worse than as a team member being managed.
Oh yeah.
Like when someone makes you feel like, so I give you this example. Currently my role, my job, we've had a lot of transition, like a lot. And so in the interim, we've had a multitude of directors, and it is hard when you don't have the time to really, really delve into a leadership role, to really like give it your all. And so our leaders have been way more management oriented. And so it's been very task oriented versus like vision oriented. And so like the task oriented is like, hey, we need to get X, Y, and Z done. Da 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 da. How are you doing this? What are you doing? How are we gonna da 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 da? And I was like, wait a minute, this is not how I work. Right. And it was really beginning to wear me down because I am not a task oriented person. I'm very much a visionary person. And I'm also very much a give it to me and let me run. And then if I need you, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I lead my team. It's like I have empowered and supplied you with what you need to be successful, and I'm willing to step in and do the work alongside you, but you've been empowered to lead your own processes and to dream for your area. And I think a lot of times when we start managing people, when we start taking away that autonomy and that ability to contribute to the organization, we also quell and quiet the parts of them that could make our organizations better. Like we prevent them from dreaming and becoming their own visionaries for their roles because we start micromanaging. You can
Right.
easily slip into micromanaging when you
Right.
see people as tasks or as things that need to be managed. Like, oh, she don't know what to do. I got to go over there and manage her. No, but when you are a leader of people, you become a developer. You say, okay, in order for them, and that's what you guys did, in order for them to be good at doing this thing that we want to delegate to them, we need to continue to develop them so that they know how to make these decisions, right? And so sometimes that looks like creating a new strategy. Sometimes that looks like, hey, we're low as an organization, we're low on this skill set, or they don't have the same perspective that we have about something. So we need to change their perspective, but they're more than capable. When you see the people as you lead as being capable, then you will always work to empower them to do work. When you see the people you lead as being needy,
Mm.
are as being projects.
Yeah.
Like when you make them a project instead of, because you're supposed to manage projects, but when you make people into a project, then you start treating them like, like, hey, here's the 1, 2, 3 list of what you can do, and then I'll handle the rest. Right. And then your presence becomes a hindrance.
That's right.
When you manage people, when you show up, you make them feel like, okay, they don't really think I'm capable. So now they coming up and they snooping.
Right.
Versus if you are a developer of people and if they feel empowered to do what you've assigned them to do, when you show up, they pull you into their vision. And as a leader, I can't, I'm like, that's like the sweet spot is when my team comes and says, Jaquita, this is the vision that I have for how I'm going to lead this part of my organization, and then all they're asking me is, from your view, from your perspective, what do I need to be mindful of? What do I need
Right.
to change? What do I need to shift? How can I make my vision bigger? And that's what we need. That's where we need to get to as leaders. I am developing you to carry your own vision, and then it becomes my job to help you enlarge your vision. But my vision includes the whole team. I need you to handle yours, and I got you. And so like when we become the push instead of the pull,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when we
That's
are
good.
pushing people from behind, like, you got it, go for it, push, 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 instead of pulling them towards, hey, this is the way I see things need to be done. I'm going to pull you to where I'm at. You are going to, that's how we lose these young leaders, because we treat them like they don't know anything and that they're not capable. And they're going to go somewhere where they feel valued. People do not feel valued when you do not leave room for their input
For sure.
and for them to be able to contribute to the organization. They don't feel valued. And I think sometimes what's worse is when what you are contributing gets misconstrued, like because other people may not understand your leadership style. But if you are a leader that is developing people, then you are doing what you're supposed to do. If the people you're leading feel like they are getting what they're supposed to get, that's the first grade you should consider when considering if you're a good leader. What do the people who follow you, what do they say? And take their, and that those are the first points that I believe you should take seriously, because they're the most impacted.
They are, and they're gonna know. I think That is, again, I think this combination of development and process are so crucial. You can't properly develop somebody without a process. So even your
Mm.
development needs a process, so
Yeah.
that you have a direction that people can expect to go when
Yeah.
it comes to their own growth. And I think, and that is, I think that's the work of people who are leading other people, is to not just develop a process for the thing, for the task, but develop a process for your team. Like, personally, this is what I expect. You started here, I expect you to grow here. And it takes time. And I think that is a difficult thing in this culture, is that we expect everything to, I mean, we really, they call us the microwave culture, which is true. This is the TikTok culture,
We
right?
like it fast.
Right, like, I mean, which is way faster than a microwave. The TikTok world it's 15 to 30 seconds.
Listen,
You're
they wouldn't have made it through MySpace when we was
you
actually
moving.
on there like coding and
No,
like,
right.
yeah, like,
No,
hold on, I need to find the song and get it into the
right.
algorithm,
No, for real. Like, it's just
Yeah.
it's we thought what the way we move was fast. Their movement is so fast, and they're because
Yeah.
they've grown up in a what they call a digital. They're digital natives. This is, they don't know anything else, and
Yeah.
so I we have to take that into consideration, that we have a much we have a this the young leaders coming up learn faster than any generation we've ever had.
Mhm.
Therefore, you have to be prepared faster to nurture that nurture the learning. They're going to be ready to do more faster than other people. They're going to be
Yeah.
ready to lead more faster than you were, because they have a different knowledge expansion that
Yeah, they
happens.
have a different access. I think the thing you have to remember is that they have a lot of information but not a lot of understanding. And what you as a leader should be able to provide is perspective and
Yep.
insight,
Yep.
right? Because they're coming at you. Everyone I lead has at least a master's degree. Are they working on getting their masters? Are
Mhm.
they real educated or real experienced? Like, everybody I have, like, they come in with something, right? But what makes me the leader is my perspective. What qualifies me as a leader is my ability to take what they know and to give them what they need to take it to the next level,
Mhm.
right? And so you can't be intimidated. One of my leaders has an MBA. He roll around. He like, hey, we're gonna start doing stoplight scenarios, and I got some systems, and I want to do this. He has like 10 million ways that he works. Right? I can't quench that in him, but I should be able to continue to give him insight about, okay, you have a lot of tools. Here's how you use them to get a better result.
Right.
Right? You have to be able to take what they have, and that means you as a leader cannot be slack about researching and getting up to par with the same knowledge that they have. On my team, I have a master of divinity. I didn't get a master's in student affairs. I didn't learn none of that, right? But I have to make sure that I'm staying up to par with what the rest of my team knows so that I can continue to give them perspective.
Man, that's good.
That's leader talk. Now, if you managing, you not worried about none of that.
There you go. And thank you. That's the difference. That's the difference. That is the difference. And I think we have most people, I forgot what the statistic is. Most people who leave an organization leave because of their direct manager.
Mm,
Most, I mean, in the high 80s. Like, it's staggering.
my lord.
And it just speaks to the importance of understand even that language, right? A manager, which is fine, but again,
Hmm.
you have to understand, as a manager, if that is even in your title, which it is in so many, you are managing a system, you are managing a process, you're not
Yeah.
managing a human. So what do you 82%, 82%, I found it, 82% of people leave as a result of a direct person that they have to report to, their
My
direct
lord.
report. So
That's
so
real.
your relationship with that individual is crucial. And if on both sides of that, if you're the one doing the leading or if you're the one that's being led in that way, if people who are in have a level of management responsibility, if I think if we can get this, if we can separate that out and put my energy into managing systems and processes, which part of it again is making sure that they're there, making sure that they are clear, making sure that it's communicated well, then you have very little to do but pay attention to people.
Yeah.
That is your job. That's your job.
Amen, somebody. Amen. I feel like I've been trying to get people to understand that. I honestly think the thing that makes you a good manager is your operational or institutional knowledge. The thing that makes you a good leader is your self awareness and your ability to communicate and your ability to develop people, right? But you cannot lead somebody past the point that you've led yourself.
No, come
So
on.
if you are not investing in your own development, then you don't know what, when you sit in front of a team member and you're trying to help them to grow or to move past something or to shape like the way that they are growing in their leadership, if you are not actively doing that work in yourself, it's going to be real difficult to do that work for someone else. I used to work, I had an after school program for third through fifth graders, and I had like a couple of different teachers. And I had one teacher, she just could we was in, we was at Title One school, amen.
You was in the
Um
hood. Don't say it, Quita. You
with
was in the
it was
hood.
at a Title One school, all right, with
Come on,
beautiful
man.
children. I love those kids. Those kids were hilarious. But those kids, like, you had to be able to take a joke. You had to be able to take a joke and you had to be able to return that joke. You get what I'm saying? Like, I remember one day they'd be like, "Ooh, Miss Ross, what's wrong with your hair? Hey, bro, your shoes is untied. Worry about that and get down the hall." Like, you had to be able to take that. But I had teachers who could not take it. They
Yeah.
was like, they're disrespectful. They're this, they're that. And I just don't know why they say these things to me. And I was like, the real problem is not what these kids are doing, because they're kids. The real problem is what work have you done on you? Let me stop pointing in the camera, trying to be respectful. What work are you doing on you so that you can recognize that these are words coming from a child who's probably been through more than you've been through, who's probably experienced some things that you don't know about, but you're so worried about your needs that you can't attend to their needs. And as a leader, you have to be responsible for taking care of your needs at the house, baby. I don't get to come to work and unload my needs on
My
the
Lord.
people I'm leading.
My
I
Lord.
don't get to be like, well,
My
my
Lord.
boyfriend broke up with me. I ain't
Come
got no
on.
boyfriend, but I don't get to go in there and be like, well, I mean, the bills ain't billing, the money ain't, and the needs ain't meeting, the ends not meeting, my Lord, right? I don't get to unload on them. I come in and I come in and I say, you know what? This space is yours,
Yeah.
right? Our one-on-one time, any time that I have dedicated to developing you, right? This space is yours. This is your space. This is your time. And my mind is focused on, what can I do? What can I share? What can I pull from my well in order to provide something for you that you need, right? And so leadership is a very unselfish place. And if you go in there thinking about what you need, and well, ain't nobody leading me, baby, you better go read a book, listen to a podcast. Amen.
Amen.
Right? Find you some
Yeah.
resources and get what you need to be a better leader.
She
Get
said it.
what you need, baby.
Get what
Get
you
what
need.
you
That's
need.
good. So we're gonna move on to the next point here because I think these are things that what we've been talking about so far really you gotta have, I think, these three things to really effectively do it.
Talk about it.
And and so I'm gonna share them, and Quita, you tell me what you think, okay?
All right.
So we'll call it the three C's. Okay, that's what we're gonna do.
That's handy.
So, in order to really effectively do this kind of stuff, really understand the difference between management and leadership, and prepare yourself for that. Really taking action the way things, the action part of things. What do you need in order to do that? The first thing you need to do is be able to connect. Okay, as a leader, you have to connect. You have to build and nurture relationships. That is with your team. That is with people who your co
Mm,
leaders. That is with people outside of your organization. You have to be able to connect human to human, have
hmm
connection. because
Yeah.
without connection, you're not going to listen well. You're not going to have empathy. You're not going to be able to take action when it's time to take action, because of, so you're not going to be able to lead unselfishly without connection. You have to have connection. Okay. The second thing I think is you have to learn how to communicate
My Lord.
well.
You gotta
That is
talk.
that is one of the hardest things. I mean, people talk all day without communicating.
My Lord.
People talk all day without communicating. I have been one of
Yes,
those
they
people.
do.
I've been one of those
Mm.
people.
I am one of those people.
Because communication is two ways. It's a
Hmm.
two-way street. You have the person who's talking, the person who's listening. If it's not, if you are not adept at playing both roles, you're not a good communicator.
Mm. Ooh, ooh, I got so much. I got so
Okay.
much. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go
Why do
ahead.
you need
Go
to
ahead.
communicate well? Because people cannot work confused. They need clarity.
Mm.
Third thing, you have to be creative. You have to be creative. Nothing stays the same in our world.
And it don't.
It's not going to be the same. So
And it ain't.
you have to learn how to move with change. And part of moving with change is being creative. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, come on.
Hey.
Hey, hey. For those of you who are listening and not watching, you missed our little bounce. All right, it's the
Yeah.
creative
We
bounce.
bouncing. Yeah, we bouncing because you gotta be able to flow. You gotta be able to go with the
Yeah,
flow. And you can't always control that flow. So you
the
gotta be
millennial
creative in it.
bop. I'm sorry.
Creative in it. Creative in it.
Wait, isn't there something that they were like, you can always tell when a millennial is dancing because we start with a clap, like, oh, like,
Yeah.
yeah, we just,
It is what it is.
oh
It is what it is.
man,
It is what it is. You can say what you
listen,
want. We still look, we whatever. You wouldn't be where you are without us. Anyway, so yeah. So those three
raise the
things, right?
roof.
Connect. Thank you, Jaquita.
You're
Connect,
welcome.
communicate, and create.
Yo, can I skip? I just need to skip to communicate real quick, okay? Because it is touching my soul. And it's probably something that I honestly have to work on. Actually, Ruth Abigail, just last night, just last night.
Excellent example.
Yeah, just last night, me and Ruth Abigail were talking, and like, if anybody knows like Myers Briggs personality type or Enneagram or anything that dictates like a personality like style, me and Ruth are on opposite sides of the spectrum. Like, we are completely different. I'm an ENFP, she's an ISTJ. I think I'm an Enneagram 7, you're a 3. Like, we are like just like completely different on all accounts. And so we were having a conversation last night, and I was like trying to express myself and not doing it very well. And Ruth Abigail was responding to what I was saying, but I realized that, and I was getting frustrated because I was like, why is she not hearing me? And I realized that she was hearing what I was saying, but I had not yet communicated what I
Mm,
meant. And a lot of times,
that's
I
good.
know that
That's
rolled
good.
off real smooth, didn't it? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. You're
Very good.
welcome. Right. And a lot of times we're talking, but we haven't even I one thing about my personality styles, I'm an extroverted thinker. So I'm literally processing as I'm talking. Right. And so if I don't do my pre work and process before I talk with somebody, they are literally getting like, raw thoughts. These are not cooked thoughts. They haven't been in an oven. I didn't put them in a microwave, nothing. It's like a carrot straight out the ground, like here, right? But when they respond to my thought and not my process, I get frustrated because I'm like, that's not what I meant. I need to get to the point where I understand what I'm really trying to say.
Yeah.
And so we were back and forth last night. And finally, it was when I sobered myself and was able to communicate and say, here's my real concern.
Yeah.
And here's what I'm really trying to say and communicate. And from there, it was golden.
Yeah.
Like, it was like, okay, wait, I get it. And I realized that she was responding to my feelings or to, but I wasn't expressing like my truer like concerns.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we don't really give space for real communication. Like we're just like, yeah, I heard what you said, and I got something to say to that. And it's like, yeah, but did you get to what they meant? Are you able to read into people's real intentions and concerns? Because you cannot be a good leader just listening to what people say. You have to be able to read hearts. You got to be able to anticipate. And that's where that relationship, that connection piece comes in. You got to know your people.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like every single one of my team members is different. You got to know them. Last example, and then I'm going to pass the ball. Like I have one of my directors, like he is not like, he doesn't tell me when stuff is wrong. Right. He came in my office one day. He said, "Hey, Jaquita, how you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" He's like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm good." And then he just stood there. And I was like, "Okay." Then like 15 minutes later, he said, "Hey, Jaquita, how you doing?" I said, "I'm good. How you doing?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm all right." Then like an hour later, he's like, "Hey, Jaquita, you doing all right?" And I finally said, "Hey, bro, what's going on? You need something?" He was like, "Yeah, well, actually, I am going through something." And I didn't realize, he literally asked me how I was doing 5 times that day. And I didn't realize he was trying to clue me in to say, "Hey, I need you."
Mm-hmm.
Right. But you got to know your people because they're not always going to communicate outright. But you got to be able to pick up on those idiosyncrasies so that you can be able to identify needs as they arise. And it is incumbent upon the leader to be able to recognize nonverbal cues, to be able to recognize when your people have something to say to you, and to be able to read them because they're going to say it differently. And communication and that connection piece got me. So sorry,
No,
I had to go in a little bit.
that's good. So, as you were talking, number one, I'm realizing I actually have a teammate who is very much like you as an external processor, and
You're welcome.
and she's incredible. All my whole team is just crazy good, and so but when we talk, and I find myself, let me pause. She is an external processor,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes there is tension with the way that you operate because it's like I'm not. I'm constantly in my head, and by the time it comes out, at least is as clear as I can make it. Um
Mm-hmm.
and then people responding and asking questions help to always get it to be more clear. And here's the other thing I think is important with learning how to communicate with external processors, if that's not you, is that, and I do this, I make the mistake of doing this. I made the mistake of doing this with you last night, Quita, as I was talking, and you
It's all
said
right.
it. Responding to somebody's feelings with thoughts. You can't do that. You
Mm-hmm.
can't do that. Um, you don't respond to feelings with thoughts because when people are communicating their feelings, they're not looking for your thoughts. They're looking for your presence more than anything. And
Mm-hmm.
and really just looking for an opportunity to just be heard as far as how you're feeling, not your thoughts
Yes.
about their feelings. And I think we are, my thoughts are so loud. My feelings are much more
Mm.
quiet. And
Mm.
when I speak, I'm speaking directly to somebody else's thought process. But if
Mm-hmm.
that hasn't come yet, then sometimes I feel inadequate for the situation. It's like, well, what else you want me to do? Like I mean, you said this yesterday. Like you told me, you said you've gotten to a place that I haven't gotten yet, and
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I get that. So my job is to understand that and to allow you to have a process of getting there. And so with your team, it's the same way. With
Yeah.
when I have team members who are external processors, don't assume that they don't know. Don't assume that they're confused.
Yeah.
Don't assume that those things are happening. Don't assume that they're not going to ever figure something out or that they have a lack of understanding. It's not. They're processing something. Wait until they get to that place. And I've experienced this with her because it's like I'll say things and then she'll be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, like I totally understand that." And it's like in my mind, sometimes I'm like, "Well, then what was all that about?" Because I'm hearing something. It's like it doesn't seem like you understand based on what you're saying, but that's not her thoughts. That's her feelings.
Yeah.
And feelings end. Feelings are just uncontrolled. They're not, we don't control them.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And so I think that is just important. Don't respond to a feeling with a thought when people are not in a place where they're using the thinking side of their brain. You
Mhm.
can't connect that way. It doesn't work yet.
Well, yeah, and I think that like you were communicating solutions,
Awesome.
whereas I was still trying to fully communicate the problem.
Correct.
And that's
Absolutely.
why I was like, you're ahead of me right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, because for me, it was important that I express my feelings. It was important that I was able to say, hey, this is making me feel da 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 da. But when you start spouting out solutions, I was like, okay, wait, you're invalidating
Yeah.
my experience. And it's making me feel like you're not really like, I was like, don't make me feel like a silly little girl. Like, I
Yeah.
understand everything you're saying, but and because me and Ruth, we have worked our friendship to the point where it was an easy conversation to have. Like, like it didn't feel like I was having to be super vulnerable. It was just, hey, I need to let her know how I'm feeling in this moment because and what I also told her was I needed the challenges that she gave me. It was just the timing of it was,
Mm.
hey, wait, let's get to it together. And communication is not a solo journey. Like, you're not doing it
No.
alone.
No.
So when you are communicating with your team members and you know more and see more and understand more than they do, and you start spouting off, well, you need to XYZ and do this, and that, and you're not walking with them where they are, you have got to learn how to start from their viewpoint and help to expand their view versus trying to give them the big picture straight off the top,
Mm.
because you don't want to invalidate where they are. You also don't want to assume that you have nothing to learn from what they would be able to communicate to you about what they see,
That's good.
right? That you I think in every area that we lack humility, we risk falling.
Yeah. That's
In
good.
every area, I know, right? Pride comes
That's
before the
good.
fall. Y'all know it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In every area that you lack humility, you risk falling,
Yep.
right? Because if you come at your team with the, hey, I know what we need to do, and this is what we going, and da 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 da, and you don't open it up for them to be able to provide their own insights and their own experiences, then your perspective alone is not going to carry the organization. You need to be able to go on that journey with your people to
Yeah.
help get them from point A to point B.
So just final thoughts on these three things. So I just think that they're just very key
Yeah.
to leadership is that you're connecting, right? Connection is an important thing. Understand that your learning isn't just going to come from books and podcasts, it's going to come from people. So you got to make new connections and you got to nurture old ones. So that's important. Spend your time doing that. And then on the communication piece, clarity is your friend. You want to be clear. Okay. If
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense outside of your own head, you haven't gotten there yet. You have
Yeah.
more work to do. So
Yeah.
keep working it out, right? Make it make sense because it's worth your time to do that. And then creativity is like you have to treat your brain as an engine, and creativity is the fuel to that engine. So don't run out of gas because change is coming and you've got to that muscle's got to be right. So don't ever let your brain stop being creative. You may not always use everything
Mm,
you think about, but at least write it down, right?
that's good.
Write it down so that when it comes to the point where you need it, you have it and you're
Yeah.
not searching for it. So I just wanted to
Love
kind of
it.
like make sure that we really understood why that's those things are important. They're not the only important things, but they're super crucial. And if, you know, as you are preparing for leadership, or if you're new in your leadership, or if you've been there for a while, nurturing those three things are going to help.
I love it. That was good, Rue. The three C's.
The three C's.
The three C's. Love it. All right. We got one more point for you guys that we want to talk about. And I am becoming an unwilling expert in this. And it is the transitions of leadership, right? One, if you are a leader in any type of way, there are going to be times where you have to let go of a former whatever, a
Yep.
former idea, a former practice, a former way of being, right? So leadership transitions is all about letting go, and it's also all about raising up. As a leader, there are going to be times where you have to build, where you have to strengthen, where you have to create something that was not there before,
Yep.
right? And so, as we are thinking about, I think one of the things that I've really had to unlearn in the midst of those leadership transitions is checking my own ego and my own connection to the past and my reliance on my past
Mm.
experiences versus allowing the future to dictate how I operate in the present.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Right?
good.
Any thoughts on that,
Hold
Ruth?
on. Say that. You got to say that one more time. You got
Okay,
to
all
say
right.
that one more time because that
All
thing was
right.
good.
The thing that I've had to learn as a leader is to not just rely on my past, but to allow my future to determine how I operate in the present.
That is really good. Let the future determine how you operate in the present. I will say this about leadership transition. Ooh, and this has been a tough. This is I've had to go through this not at the level of some people, but I remember someone who I'm close to saying this about their their leadership transition experience is they were coming behind a highly effective, successful founding leader.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he required in order for him to say yes to this position was that that leader understood where he was going next.
That's perfect.
That future is
Mm-hmm.
highly important when it comes to
Yeah.
transitions because if you are unclear about the future, you will not know how to operate today. And that is not, it's not just about the person coming in, it's about the person going out.
Yeah.
So your and this is difficult. Now I'm not now the person who did this was a very seasoned leader. I mean, they're up there,
Mm-hmm.
they're doing their thing. You're talking about, you're talking about somebody in their, mid to late 20s, early 30s who are kind of following effective leaders and
Mm-hmm.
going into these positions and going into these moments where you're having to take on these responsibilities. Um it is it's not as easy to make that as a requirement, right? Like you got
Yeah,
to figure out what you're going to do next, right? Figure
for
out
sure.
what your next move is, and I need to know that before I sit here and do this, right? But I would challenge people who are going into those situations. You're especially following a founder or somebody who's at the very beginning of something. That is a difficult thing to follow, that you make sure, and even if that's you got to help them do it. Hey, what's your next move? What are you excited about? Like what are
Mm-hmm.
what are you looking forward to about your future? Because if they are focused on their future, they will not be overly concerned about where you are in the present, which is now
Yeah.
their past.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I think that for me, especially like most all of the jobs that I got a job offer, I ain't take all the ones I got the offer for, but all of the ones that I got a job offer is because I was able to go into the interview and tell them what their next move was as an organization.
Yeah.
I studied that organization. I studied the culture. I studied what was happening. Like, do you have new leadership? What has shifted and changed for this organization within the last 3 to 5 years? What challenges are they currently facing? And it's easier to find than you think. Read some news articles, okay, especially if they're a well-known organization. Go look on their website, see if there's been any new leadership transitions, see if there's been anybody that has come from somewhere different that's now in. Go read the people, go look at the staff directory and see, okay, where did these people get educated at? When did they start working here, right? unpack that, and then start looking at the mission and the vision of that organization and see where they are according to who they said that they are. Right.
Mm,
And I was able in those interviews, that's how I got my current job. I went in there and I said, I see that y'all are here.
mm,
Right. I see that y'all just recently became an office that brought 3 teams together 2 years ago at the height of COVID. Right. I know that where you're going to need to get to is this. And this is the next step for this organization, not based on where you've been, but based on where you have to go.
yeah.
And in order to be a good leader, you have to be able to communicate. There's that word again. You have to be able to communicate a vision of where we're going and point us in that direction. Leadership is a constant resettling of the people to point them back toward the promised land. That's what Moses did. Moses was like, y'all, no, the red, come on. We gotta go through here. I'm pointing y'all to the promised land. Oh Lord, we in the wilderness. They done got stuck again. Hey, pointing you back. Pointing you back to the promised land. Excuse me, everybody. Can I get your attention, please? We're going this way,
Yeah.
pointing you back to the promise, right? And he had to constantly fight to keep their minds out of Egypt. Like, please stop thinking about where we
Yeah.
came from.
Yeah.
That's not who we are anymore. We're headed toward a promise. And as a leader, you are constantly fighting to get people to not get stuck in their experiences of their past, because whichever way they decide to look, because we're all standing in the present, right? Everybody is present in the present. That's where we're standing at. But where you're looking at, where your team is looking at, will determine where you go. So if you have a team that's constantly looking back, oh man, remember when? Oh man, I used to love when we used to do that. Oh man, we should continue these practices that worked for us 3 years
Mhm.
ago. If they're constantly looking back, then you'll never be able to push them toward promise. You have to keep your team looking toward the thing, toward the productivity, toward the purpose, toward the promise that we're trying to move them to. And so you have to be able to communicate a vision that is in front of them and not the one that's behind them. And it
Yeah.
I, as a person who has experienced a lot of leadership transitions, is not always as easy as one may think. Because when I lost my first supervisor, we still struggling, okay, right? And so like you have to be mindful to be like, okay, yes, that was a great era. Like, yes, we
Yeah.
loved it. Oh, it was awesome. Oh, but we not, baby, it doesn't make, we can't keep pointing ourselves back that way. We have to point ourselves to the promise of our future.
Mm, that's good. I realized that when you said that, I took it a totally different way, and but I kind of, when I think leadership transition, I think person, for whatever reason. I don't know why. It's the first thing that comes to my mind, like
Mm-hmm.
in an individual. And so what I was hearing you say was, as an entity, some that transition happens sometimes as a result of a person, but as a in your example, COVID, like you,
Mm-hmm.
this was built during this era. We got to move into a different era, but it is a almost, you're moving an organism or an organization. You're moving an
Mm-hmm.
entity, and so the entity is going through a transition. And I, in my when I hear leadership transition, I first think individual. Now, I'll say this: obviously, they have they impact each
Similarities.
other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because so much of the movement of an organization into a different transition has to do with an individual who is going through a transition, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
understanding how to manage both of those realities, and understanding that both of those need to be managed well, I think
Mm-hmm.
is so important. And so, like, it's important that the individual who is transitioning is excited about and not tied to their past, but they're excited about their future. And it's important for an organization to be focused on future and not so ingrained in what's going on in the past. And why do you think it's so hard for that? Like, why do you think it's hard to get there? What do you think the barriers are in people's brains when it comes to like moving from present, from past to future?
Because I think the future requires trust. I think it requires us to pull on the pieces of us that are okay with the unknown. And we don't like that. Like experience all comes out of the past, right? It is easier to trust your experience because I've seen that. And even if it wasn't good, at least I know how to work with it, right? That's why people stay in bad
Yeah.
relationships or in things that they know may not be fruitful for them, because at least I know it.
Yeah.
At least it's familiar, right? When we talk about the future and we start thinking about the hope of what something could be, hope is dangerous.
Yeah.
Hope is risky, right? Like saying that, like, ooh, maybe what I hope for can become a reality. Hope is also work, right? Where experience is routine.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I can just
That's
do what
true.
I've
Yeah.
always done.
That's true.
And even if it doesn't work, I can still look like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
Versus if I'm saying, okay, we're going to move to something new and we're going to do something new, we as a team have to take a step back. I have to build a plan. I have to
Yeah.
build a system. I have to figure out how are we going to get there,
Yeah.
right? And I have to, as a leader, I have to trust my God, amen. But I also have to trust like my own gift set,
Yeah.
right? Because I have to lead out of my own strengths,
Yeah.
right? And so I have to trust what I have to get us where we're going. And so a lot of times people don't want to go through that experience of risk and that experience of vulnerability. The
Yeah.
future is a vulnerable place to orient yourself to,
Mm.
because we don't always know it.
Yeah. We don't know.
And it doesn't always work out the way that we think that we do. But that is why it's so important. Somewhere in your leadership, in the leadership of your organization, there has to be a visionary. There
100%.
has to be people who are willing to set vision that they can then communicate to people so that people will be willing to take the risk.
Yeah. No, that's good. And we're going to talk about that. I think in part two is what that can look like. I think the other thing about um, transition is that we have to. And the other thing that I've seen and I have personally had to unlearn about transition is that is absolutely not quick, because when you are moving, the old African proverb, when you go fast, go alone, you go far, you go together, right?
Listen,
Um,
ending with an African proverb is the most middle adult
ah,
thing we could
listen,
ever do.
listen.
It is
It is
the
what it is,
most
man.
middle adult. And I'd like to end
It
with an
is. It
African
is.
proverb.
Well,
Go with me, if you will.
it is
Oh, that's
though.
hilarious.
It's real though. It is a very middle adult thing, and I learned it from an older adult. So, but it is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's real.
Yeah.
And I like to move fast. Like I am a fast mover. I don't like moving slow. And so for me, transition, what I've had to unlearn is that in the process of transition, you are not just transitioning you are transitioning
Hmm.
it.
Yeah,
So it does not move fast, even though you do.
that's good.
And I believe that if we can reset our expectations around the process of transition, then
Mm.
sometimes it won't feel as painful. So, that is, I think this is really important. It's something I've had to unlearn. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I have had to really, and I still do. And I think about like, okay, we need to make these changes. Like this is what I see, right? It's like we need to do this, this, and this. Okay, tomorrow we're gonna start that tomorrow, guys. And it's like I expect it to be like, okay, all right, so I'm gonna send an email. I have done this. I have done this.
Yeah,
God, I've done this.
yeah,
And
yeah.
my
No, yeah.
team has looked at me like, hold on, like, wait a minute.
Girl,
So
what
you
is you
want us to
doing?
start this next week? We just got this, and you didn't even
Like we're in
really,
the
you sent
middle
an
of like
email. Like
big project.
I one time sent a really lengthy email. I was having a team member transition from part time to full time, and in order to do that, though, she was gonna like not do some of the duties she was doing then to focus in on some other stuff at a full-time capacity. So some of those other duties were going to have to shift to other members of the team. Now, I, in my dumbness, sent an email explaining this. I didn't talk to anybody.
Ruth Abigail.
I sent an email being like, okay, guys, as of this date, this is what's going to happen.
Ruth Abigail.
I was dumb. And they
This is how you learn to become a leader of people and not a manager.
like literally, this is how you
Yeah.
learn. You do stupid
Yeah.
stuff. Like I have done stupid things.
Yeah, no, because that required a meeting.
That required a meeting. But in my flawed understanding, I said, well, we don't have time. Like we got to move. And it's like we got this much space, this much time. We're already in a little bit of a culture tension. It was just a lot going on. And so I was like, take action. We're going to do this. We've had so many other meetings where I'm not going to meet anymore. We're just going to do it. Dumb. This is dumb.
That's young leader stuff right
This
there.
is
Like,
dumb.
hey, all right. I sent y'all the email. Now I
is
expect
dumb.
to see it.
And so I learned like you can't make those kind of shifts fast because it's not just about you understanding it, it's about everyone understanding it, and everybody's not going to understand it at the rate you are. And not going to be ready to move at the rate you are.
My
So
Lord.
it is important to take your time. Don't expect for transitions to happen fast. They won't. And so that's that anyway. Yeah, transition and transition is one of the hardest things in leadership that you'll ever have to do, but it is the most constant thing that you will ever have to do. So,
Facts. Actual and factual.
yeah.
Listen, if you are committed to not going alone on your leadership journey, share part one with someone, study it, talk about it with each other, grow in your leadership journeys, and then meet us together for part two,
Part
where we
2.
got some more great, great, great leadership facts and figures and things and perspectives and understandings that we're going to unpack for you guys. And send us questions and comments. If you are talking about this with another leader and something comes up, or if you're talking about some things with your team, right, and you have like a great revelation, or you like questions come up, send us those in the comments. Send us direct messages, reply to us on our Instagram post, send it to the DM, and we will get back to you.
We will.
And we look excited. We are excited to continue with you guys on your leadership journeys.
Yo, well, I think we're done with this one.
Think we're done with segment 1.
Yeah, we are. Y'all,
Yeah.
let's keep unlearning together so we can experience more freedom. We will see you next week. Peace.
Peace.